Hi, I'm Jen Hilburn. I'm a senior technical instructor here at Okta. Among other courses, I teach our Implement Advanced Server Access course. If you are an experienced admin and it's your job to centralize access controls for your on-prem, hybrid, multi-cloud servers, then this is the class for you. In this class, we're going to show you how to use Advanced Server Access to extend Okta's single sign-on, adaptive MFA provisioning to your servers. You'll be using ephemeral credentials rather than static keys, and that's going to take your security to a whole new level. And it's really easy to use. So come with me, let me show you the topics that we cover in the class. I'll talk about the flow of the class. I'll show you a demo of enrolling a couple of servers so you can see how easy that part is. And it'll give you a really good feel for how we do things in class. Well, let's begin by looking at the content of this two-day course. We begin day one with a high-level view of the different components in ASA and use cases. We look at some of the architecture, and then we start to dig into implementation. We work with teams. So this is your ASA tenant, and you need to set it up and then integrate it with Okta. From there, we look at provisioning and learn how to provision users and groups into the ASA tenant. Then we create some projects, and the project is the authorization scope that brings your users and the servers that they're going to use together. And then we enroll a couple of servers. And on day two, we begin by focusing on clients. We look at client enrollment policies, client configuration. We work with the API because everything that you can do in the UI, you can do with the API. In the Cloud Servers module, we talk about bastion architecture. We look at automatic enrollment in your IaaS environments like AWS and how you can use automation tools like Terraform. And then we do some monitoring and troubleshooting. And then we have a big activity at the end of the day where you can apply much of what you have learned over the course of the class. As promised, I'd like to explain the process of enrolling both Windows and Linux servers into an ASA tenant, and then follow these explanations with a demo. In ASA, you create projects that bring your users and servers together. So the project is really an authorization scope. You group your servers together based on similar access needs, and then you assign groups of users to the project, and those users will have access to the servers. Here, we want to understand the agent installation process. We're going to focus mainly on enrollment tokens as a method of enrolling your servers. Now, there is an automatic method that's available, but here and in the demo, I'll focus on using enrollment tokens. And then we'll look at some agent configuration options. Now, the automatic enrollment flow involves you as an administrator configuring, say, an AWS account in a project. And from that point on, any server that you ramp up in that AWS environment that has the agent on it, it'll automatically be enrolled in this project. So you put the agent on a server in that AWS account. The agent's going to reach out and get some metadata about the instance, and then it's going to look up the team and project based on that account ID. And then it'll store the server's identity on the server. With an enrollment token, as an admin, you first go into your ASA tenant and create an enrollment token. And then you're going to copy the token onto the server. So when the agent starts up, it's going to go look for that enrollment token and grab from the enrollment token the tenant and project ID. and then it'll enroll the server in that project and store the server's identity information on the server there. The enrollment token is created at the project level, so you can reuse an enrollment token for multiple servers if you like. It contains the URL to your ASA tenant, to your team, and then it has the ID of the project. So that's what the agent's reading from there. That's how it knows where to enroll the server. By default, auto enrollment is configured. So auto enrollment is enabled, which means even if you have an enrollment token, if you've already configured your AWS account in the project, for example, that flow would take precedence. So if you're using that automatic flow for most of your servers, but now you have some that you want to do with a token, you'll need to turn off the auto enrollment. It's just a configuration setting in a YAML file, so it's not terribly difficult to do. You're going to create the enrollment token in the project, put it on the server. You can see the path here on a Linux server or here on Windows. You can optionally configure some parameters in a YAML file, and then you're going to install the agent. So that YAML file, here are some of the options that you have in there. You can, for example, turn off that auto enrollment. So by default, it's set to true, but you can turn it off. If you want users to access this server through a particular Bastion host, you can configure that in the YAML setting as well. You can also configure a canonical name. That is a name that will show up in the ASA tenant, and it's also most likely the name that your users will use when they go to SSH or RDP into the server. So those are just a few of the settings that you can make in that YAML file. You can see the Linux versions that are supported. This is a list worth keeping an eye on as it does update from time to time. On Linux, you need to add the repository and trust the signing key before you get the agent and install it. Right, so then you're going to install the agent package. It's going to start by default. There are a variety of packages available. It'll install the SFTD service, and it'll add a service account. And from there, it just goes into an idle mode, waiting to see if there's an enrollment token file. For Windows Server, we're supporting Windows 2012 and above. Your accounts, just as on the Linux machine, your accounts are being provisioned as local accounts on the server. When you assign users to a server, you're either giving them an administrative role or a user, just a regular user role. And that's true for both Linux and Windows. On Windows, you'll download an MSI and just run it. It'll install the server tools service, your agent. It'll update the firewall rules. It's going to open up port 4421 for brokering. And then it will go into an idle mode, looking for that enrollment token. When it comes time for the agent to enroll the Linux server, it's going to read the token from that enrollment.token file. It'll enroll the server based on the project UID. If you've configured a YAML file with a canonical name, that's the name that it will use when it registers the server. If not, if you haven't configured this, it'll just use the host name. And then it'll create a bunch of state files, really. And this is true for both Windows and Linux. You get these state files on there. And you can see it's forking a broker onto 4421. Right, the agent's going to enroll the server, the Windows server, by reading the enrollment token located in that ScaleFT folder. Again, looking at the project UID, looking for that canonical name in the YAML file, along with any other settings that you've configured. It'll place some state files into your ScaleFT directory and configure the connection broker. All right, in this demo, I'm going to first enroll a Windows server, then I'll do a Linux server. In both cases, we install the server agent or the server tools. Then we're going to go create an enrollment token and put that onto the server. And once the agent has picked up that enrollment token and enrolled the server, we'll just verify that. And that really just takes, sometimes it takes a minute for the server to show up, but usually it's pretty quick. Let me begin by showing you the Advanced Server Access application. Now, I already established the ASA tenant, and if we come over here to our applications, you can see I've pulled the connector from the OIN and configured this application for the tenant. If we come to the Sign On tab here, we're going to see the configuration pointing over to the tenant that I created. I also established provisioning from Okta into the ASA tenant, and I enabled all three CRUD operations so we can create our users, update them, deactivate them based on whatever's happening in Okta. The application is assigned to multiple groups. We can see several groups assigned. That's what puts your users into your ASA tenant. And then I've pushed those same groups over there. So now we have the actual groups and their membership in ASA. So now you can assign groups to projects there and enroll servers in your projects, and that'll bring them together. It'll give your people the access to the servers that they should be able to work with. All right, well, let's enroll a couple of servers into our projects. So I'm going to just pop over to the end user dashboard and click the icon to go into the tenant. Okay, we'll come over here to projects, and you can see I've set up projects for Windows servers and Linux servers. The first server that I'll enroll is this Windows server, the virtual machine that I'm working from. So I'm just going to open this up here and go to servers and add server. This link right here will take us into the documentation on the Okta website, where we can access the download link for the agent installer. Right down here at the bottom, it says Install Advanced Server Access Agent on Windows. And then we'll just click here to download the MSI file. Now I am already logged in as an administrator on the server, so I'm just going to go ahead and run it. Accept that. Okay, well, the agent is installed and running. Now, what it's looking for is a YAML file, a configuration file, where you can prescribe certain settings, and we'll go through those in the class so you would understand them. But the one that I'm interested in setting is a name for this server, a more friendly name, something easier to admin than the host name, because the host name of this machine doesn't tell me a whole lot. So I'm going to open up Notepad and give it a canonical name. Now this needs to be saved in a particular spot with a particular file name. So I'm going to come over here and do a save as. And where we need to be is in this Scale FT folder right here. And it's very important that I change the filter from text to all files. Otherwise, it's going to want to put a TXT extension on my file name, and then the agent wouldn't read it. This needs to be called sftd.yaml. All right, now I have told it what name I want to call it. Now the other file that is required is an enrollment token. So I'm just going to get a new document going here, and then back in the ASA tenant, we can close this. We're going to come back to the project and go to the Enrollment tab here and create an enrollment token. And we'll copy that and just place it directly into this Notepad file. And we need to save it as enrollment.token. Watch out for that TXT extension. So remember to change that to all files. Enrollment.token. We'll save that up there. So the agent is going to pick up our files, and it might take a minute, but the server should show up fairly soon. We'll just refresh this. And there we have our Windows server with the name that we specified in the YAML file. So nothing too difficult there. The installer created the Scale FT folder, and then we just had to put the YAML file and the enrollment file, or the enrollment token in there. With the Linux, we're following roughly the same procedure. We just, as all things Linux, we need to do a couple of things, creating a directory and so on to put the files in. Keep in mind, though, that what we're doing here can be automated with something like Terraform. In fact, in class, you do stand up a server and a bastion using Terraform. So you'll see that in action when you actually take the class. All right, let's do a Linux server. So we're going to come back over here and come into our Linux servers here. Add a server. And this time, of course, we're interested in a different link. The servers we use for class in your lab environment are Ubuntu, so we'll use that link right here. And it's giving us several lines that we'll need to copy and paste over into the Linux machine. So we'll do that here in just a moment. I am going to go ahead and access that Linux server. I'm going to use PuTTY. And this is my IP address here for my machine. Pop that in here. And I think I'll make a couple of other changes in here as well. Bump up that font a little bit. And then, of course, we need to get our key. And I'm going to save this configuration for later use. Let's go ahead and open that. I'm going to log in as Ubuntu. All right, there we are. We are in. So I'm just going to use VI to create this file here. And insert mode. And then what we can do is just start copying and pasting those lines. So this is the first one that I want here. Pearl. And last one, we'll actually install the agent. Okay. All right, so we have our script on here, and let's go ahead and execute that, get the agent running. It's looking pretty good there. Let's just check it out. Okay, you can see that it's active, running right there in the green. Now we'll just go ahead and create our YAML file and our enrollment token file. So first we'll create a directory here. Now it's something the installer did for us on Windows. And we'll just echo this into the YAML file. We're going to call this one AWS Linux. You know, not only is this how it shows up in your project inside of ASA, it's how your users will access the server as well. So it should be something meaningful that is easy for them to see when they list it out, like, oh, that's the server that I want. Got that in there. Now we need our enrollment token. So we're going to come back out here into our tenant and click on enrollment. Okay. Got it copied. And now we're going to VI. Oops, look at that. I didn't type it correctly. Enrollment.token. There we go. Much easier to avoid that extraneous file extension here in Linux where you just have more control. I'll paste that token in here. So let's see how long it takes for that to show up in our project here. Same process, agent's running, just looking for those files. And there we have our Linux server. Now that we have some servers enrolled in our projects, what I'd like to do is show you how your users will access these servers. I'll show you a couple of different ways, one just doing a plain old SSH from a command line, and then I'm going to show you how you can create icons for the end user dashboard and even challenge for MFA when they go to access these applications. So first we'll just do a regular SSH in. I think what we'll do is we'll log in as one of our users. So let me get out of Okta as the admin here. And we're going to come in as one of our server users. Now Sally has access to the AWS Linux server that we just enrolled. And you can see that here. And so when she goes into ASA, this is what she sees. Now that I've enrolled the virtual machine as a client. So she's sitting here at her Windows workstation and she wants to list the servers, let's say. So she just comes to her command prompt, does a list servers, and now she can see the projects that she's assigned to as well as all the servers. So if she was in multiple projects, she would have multiple servers here showing the project names. And this will enable her to easily access a server. And that's why we want to give these servers a meaningful name when we enroll them. It's much easier for the users when they're listing them out or looking at them in the UI. So she can just SSH into the AWS Linux server this way. Okay, she is already signed in to ASA and she has an Okta session. So she just that quickly got that ephemeral certificate and was able to get into the server. I'm going to exit out of here. So whatever tools she's used to using, and you'll work with a bunch of different tools in the class. At any rate, they can use the tools that they're used to, but something else we can do is use what is a URL handler. And I'm going to show you here. I have it on the virtual machine clipboard here. So this is what it looks like. Inside the URL, you're specifying your team or ASA tenant, and then the server that you're trying to access, and which protocol. Is it SSH or is it RDP? So this is just for SSH here. But I need to go back in as the Okta admin in order to create this little app. Just a bookmark app is all it is. So we'll come in here as an admin. And we'll go to our applications. We're going to add an app. Grab the bookmark app. And we'll put in here AWS Linux SSH or something like that. And then I'm just going to paste that URL handler right here. Like so. Done. And although I'm not going to take the time to configure MFA, that's another topic altogether. Just like your other applications that you integrate when you come onto the sign-on tab, at the bottom you have your sign-on policy, and this is where you can add your rule. Take a look at what client they're on, what platform they're on, is their device trusted, all the stuff that you normally would look at for an access rule, and then you can challenge for MFA if it makes sense. Well, we're not going to worry about that for Sally right now. And in fact, I'm just going to give this to Sally only. For our little demo. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and log in as Sally. And I think I get rid of this little toolbar here too. Okay. We'll give her her ASA session as well. Now it would, if she didn't have one, it would prompt her to approve the access. We'll go ahead and issue this, open our ScaleFT, and you can see it's launched her in PowerShell. Right, she is already SSH'd into her server. So we could, it won't launch. If you're challenging for MFA, it's not going to fire off and launch her into the server until she successfully answers that MFA challenge. But either way, if you want to give the user something graphical, these little bookmarks using that URL handler are pretty handy. The other thing you can do is do some configuration on the client. So if they have a preference for a particular RDP client or something like that, you can configure that on the client. So if this was an RDP call, then it would fire up her Royal TSX or whatever it is she's using for RDP, for example. Okay, well, I hope that gives you a good idea of how easy it is to enroll servers, and then how simple it is for your users to access those servers from the tools they're already using or from their Okta dashboard, that giving you yet another layer of security to implement as well. Well, I hope that gives you a really good idea of what's in this class. It really is jam-packed with a lot of material, and it is designed for experienced admins. So if that's you, come on in right away. If you're a new admin or brand new to Okta, then I highly recommend that you take the Okta Essentials course first. That'll get you up and running, and then this class will make a whole lot more sense to you. All right, we look forward to having you in class.